All right, let's dive right in by doing something super simple. I just want you to take a deep breath, look around whatever space you're in right now, and get ready to completely shatter the illusion that your human perception is the whole picture. I mean, it really feels like what you see, hear, and smell is all there is, right? But what if you're actually trapped inside this tiny, restrictive sensory bubble?
Picture this. Imagine you're standing in a massive room, maybe like a big high school gym. And in this room with you, there's a mouse, a rattlesnake, an elephant, and a tiny jumping spider. Now, the wild thing is, you are all occupying the exact same physical space, yet every single one of those creatures is experiencing that room in completely different, entirely invisible ways. The rattlesnake, it's seeing the mouse's body blazing with infrared heat. The elephant is letting out this thunderous, low-pitched rumble that your ears simply cannot hear, but the snake's belly can literally feel. You are completely blind to the world they're living in.
There's actually a great word for this. Back in 1909, the zoologist Jakob von Uexküll popularized the concept of the Umwelt. It basically defines the specific part of the surroundings that an animal can actually sense. Uexküll compared it to a house with very specific windows. You can only see the garden based on exactly where your windows are placed. Take a tick, for example. Its entire world, its Umwelt, is limited to just three things: body heat, the touch of hair, and the odor of butyric acid coming off skin. Trees, blue skies, red roses. The tick isn't willfully ignoring them, it simply cannot sense them. And just like that tick, we're all trapped in our own sensory house.
So, to help guide us out of our human-centric bubble, this explainer is going to anchor our journey in Ed Yong's amazing Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Animmenseworld. We're going to take an imaginative leap into the minds and senses of the creatures around us, and impartially explore the hidden dimensions that are sitting right here on Earth.
Let's move into Section 1, Reading Invisible Chemical Biographies. We're going to start with the most ancient and universal sense of all, chemicals. Think about the stark contrast between our walks and our dog's walks. When you take a dog out, you're usually pretty rigid, right? You're going from point A to point B, visually assessing the present moment. But your dog? They're literally time traveling. Smells linger in a way that light just doesn't. Through smell, a dog is reading these invisible biographies of every single creature that passed by hours ago. They're picking up on their health, their age, their identity. They're even divining the future, sensing the arrival of a distant rainstorm on the breeze. To them, the neighborhood isn't just a map of streets. It's this seeping, shimmering landscape of hidden stories.
And to understand how they pull this off, you have to look at their mind-boggling biological hardware. See, when you exhale, you purge the air from your nose, which means your sense of smell essentially flickers on and off. But dogs, they have this intricate labyrinth in their snout that actually splits the airstream. In one experiment, an English pointer created an uninterrupted inward airstream for 40 straight seconds. Even while breathing out 30 times, the dog was creating these aerodynamic vortices out of the side slits of its nose to continuously waft fresh odors in. Their smelling literally never stops.
All right, let's jump to Section 2. Navigating the odorscape.
So it turns out animals don't just smell food. They use odors as these incredible three-dimensional maps to build entire civilizations. Ants will pass lightweight chemicals back and forth to lay trails, or use heavy ones to wear as identity badges. Elephants, swinging those massive trunks, can track the urine spots of specific family members from miles away. They can even smell the difference between human groups that pose a threat and those that don't. And out over the vast, visually featureless ocean, seabirds are out there mapping aquatic mountains and valleys based purely on invisible marine gases.
Let's actually focus on ants for a second, because the scale here is staggering. To put it into perspective, a fruit fly has about 60 odorant receptor genes, 140 for a honeybee. But the clonal raider ant, it boasts a record-breaking 500 odorant receptors. This sensory hardware is absolutely crucial because it's what allows them to act as a coordinated superorganism. If they lose this ability to smell, they literally don't know who their colony is. In fact, army ants can actually get trapped in fatal, endless death spirals, blindly following an accidental loop of their own pheromones until they just die of exhaustion.
For a really long time, our own human arrogance totally blinded us to these odorscapes. Back in 1826, the famous naturalist John J. Audubon left a stuffed deerskin out specifically to prove that vultures hunt by sight, not smell. And that created this stubborn, century-long myth that birds simply cannot smell. There was no way around it until trailblazing scientists like Betsy Bang and Gabriel Nevitt came along and finally busted this historic fallacy, revealing a completely hidden avian superpower.
Nevitt discovered that tube-nosed seabirds rely heavily on a chemical called DMS, or dimethyl sulfide, which gets released when ocean plankton are eaten. Tube-nosed hatchlings are born deep inside dark burrows. They have absolutely no idea what the ocean looks like. Yet, the moment they emerge, they immediately start tracking the topographical wrinkles of the ocean by following that invisible, oyster-like scent of DMS. It's basically an olfactory dinner bell, guiding them thousands of miles across the open water.
And this whole thing brilliantly illustrates how smelling can actually be a highly procedural sense. Take a rattlesnake. It strikes a mouse in total darkness and then just lets it run away. So how does it find it? Well, it smells in stereo. The snake repeatedly flicks its forked tongue, carving out circular arcs that create air vortices, which sucks in diffuse odors from the left and right. It then retracts the tongue, squirts the collected molecules into a specialized chamber called the vomeronasal organ, and uses the tiny difference between the left and right tips to track the exact path of the dying mouse. It's almost like watching a magic trick unfold right in the dark.
Which smoothly brings us to Section 3, tasting with your body.
Okay, shifting away from the long-distance reading capabilities of smell, let's look at a much more intimate, contact-driven chemical sense, taste. Now, while smell is incredibly complex and handles this infinite variety of molecules that require a ton of associative learning, taste is very different. Taste largely boils down to a coarse, deeply instinctive survival mechanism. It is your final, binary check right before consumption. Is this toxic or is this nutritious? Consume or spit? It's the whole reason a snake barely uses its mouth to taste. Its tongue has already done the complex chemical analysis just by smelling the air.
But what if your food is something you can just walk on? This is where insect physiology gets truly bizarre, totally blurring the sensory boundaries we're so used to, because they literally taste the world with their extremities. A bee can taste the sweetness of nectar simply by standing on a flower. A parasitic wasp uses taste sensors on the tip of its stinger, almost like a chemical drill, to check inside another insect. And a mosquito? Yeah, it tastes your skin the exact moment its legs touch your arm, immediately confirming it's landed on a warm, delicious human.
But if we're talking about the undisputed king of taste, it's the catfish. We humans are painfully limited to our tongues. A catfish, on the other hand, is essentially just a giant swimming tongue. It has thousands of taste buds spread across its entire scale-free body, all the way from its whiskers down to its tail. It has basically turned taste into an omnidirectional sense. Just imagine that for a second. If you drop a piece of meat anywhere near a catfish, it can taste it with its back, its side, or its tail, and instantly whip around to snap it up.
All right, let's head into our final section, number 4, endless ways of seeing. We've spent a lot of time exploring these alien chemical senses. But did you know our dominant sense of vision actually evolved directly from them? Deep inside the eyes of every seeing animal are these proteins called opsins. They sit on cells, just waiting to grab passing molecules that absorb light. So fundamentally, looking at a screen right now is effectively smelling light. Which brings us to a really pivotal question. We've explored smell and taste, but what happens when animals share our dominant sense of sight? Does sharing a sense mean we share the same reality?
The short answer is absolutely not. Meet the jumping spider. It actually has camera-like eyes that see with incredible sharpness, very much like ours, but it has 8 of them, completely fracturing its vision into specialized tasks. Its large central eyes see high-resolution shapes and color, swiveling around like tiny flashlights inside its head. But those central eyes have a very narrow field of view, so it uses its secondary eyes, which are wrapped around its head, purely to detect motion. And here's the wildest part. If you were to cover a jumping spider's secondary eyes, the spider completely loses the ability to track a moving fly, even if that fly is hovering right in front of its incredibly sharp central eyes. They have somehow decoupled resolution from motion in a way our brains literally cannot even comprehend.
And I think this brings us to a really lingering provocative thought from the writer Marcel Proust, who I feel perfectly summarizes the core of what we're talking about today. He said the only true voyage would be to possess other eyes. So I want you to look around your room just one more time. Really look at the empty space. Think about the silent thrumming vibrations, the swirling clouds of chemical biographies, and the ultraviolet colors bouncing off your walls that you will never, ever perceive. What other hidden universes are sitting right in front of you, entirely invisible to your human bubble? Keep wondering about that and never stop exploring.